have to go like this.
First, we're going to call the meeting to order, and we're going to stand for the Pledge of Allegiance.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Okay. Karen, can you do the roll call?
Commissioner Andrew?
Here.
Commissioner Humberston?
Here.
Commissioner Kalani?
Here.
Commissioner McNeil?
Yep.
Commissioner Soa is not present.
Okay, before we do the approval of the agenda, I'm going to use my executive powers because I want to give a congratulations to Ken Humberston for his win for Clackamas County Commissioner. I'm sure we'll miss you on the water board, but good going.
Thank you.
So.
Appreciate that. Thank you very much.
And now we'll do the approval of the agenda.
So moved. Second.
Okay. We'll vote on that. If you approve the agenda, say aye.
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 Okay, is there any public comment? Okay, so we're going to go right into the presentation by Jeff Griffin from Wilson. You're good.
Thank you very much for allowing me some time on your busy agenda tonight. It is always a pleasure to be here. Always good to see you.
Yeah. Got a better deal this year?
I do.
That was the question I asked him earlier.
Is it?
Yes.
Yeah. If you don't, I agree with you.
Yeah. So I have to tell you, it is always a pleasure to be here. It is a pleasure to work with your staff, and things continue to improve here for CRW. You may recall 2 years ago there was a significant reduction when we were able to take you out of the mainstream market and bring you back into special districts. And don't quote me on this, but I think it was a $75,000 reduction in that year. Last year we had a nice reduction, about $12,000, not to be exact, $986, about 5.99% reduction. It's still early. In fact, this week SDAO's trust has met. They will spit out what the rates will be this next week for us. But the early reviews that I'm getting from their staff look very good. Now, we coached everybody to plan on about a 5% increase. Last year I told you the same, it came down. We are going to be well under budget this year. So we've had some good dialogue back and forth with the underwriters and the trust, and I feel very comfortable with where you're at. We've just finished a series of inspections of all of our buildings, our vaults, and our owned property. We're very comfortable with those. SDAO did have an appraisal firm look at them at the end of last year. That appraisal firm suggested that we reduce our plant down, but they had missed a number of things that were very critical. We added those back in, we've gone back to the trust, and we're going to keep our property value at the plant at the same. So we're just very excited with where we're headed. You have in your packet a small review. All of the coverage will stay intact. Board member, director and officer's liability, our professional acts coverage. We look very good moving forward. So I will be delivering good news for you in the very near future, and most likely, probably the start of next year, we'll do another best practices class to get the maximum credits, the 2% board member education fees. I do want to point out that this year you maxed out your best practices credit. Last year you got 8%, which is good. 10 is the most you can get, and this year we're going to get a full 10. So I'm just really excited with where we're headed. All good news, a credit to the board. A lot of changes over the last few years, and things have headed in a great direction, and a lot of credit to your staff. Oh, yeah.
Are there any questions, comments? Okay, well,
Not
thank you
till we
very
get the rates. So.
Yeah.
We'll please you. We're going to have fun.
Good.
We're having a good time.
Want to see the numbers, right?
Yep. A whole comment till we see the numbers.
We will be under budget,
Good.
Great.
and we're going to keep working at it. Thank you so much.
Well, thank you.
Okay, so now we're going to, I need a motion to recess the regular meeting.
So moved. Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Okay, I'm now going to open the budget hearing.
Do we want to do presentation or put a motion on the floor first?
Presentation.
Okay.
We have the motion.
What?
Then we go back into regular session.
Oh, never mind.
So now you should have this all turned on before the start time. Turned off the light bulb and didn't get it back on.
Slowly. I think. go.
Oh,
He's voting.
I think it's all okay. There's something I need to push.
No.
All right, so I've got a little presentation for you talking about the budget hearing. We did have a work session previously talking about this, and we invited the budget committee members to attend that work session. So we had 3 of our budget committee members attend and share their input with us as well. So when we do a budget of any kind, we need to have a balanced budget. So that means we have to have the same dollar amount on the resource side as we do on the requirement side. So that's basically talking revenue and expenses. So on the resource side, we've got revenue. We also have a contingency fund. So we budgeted in the biennial budget $750,000 for contingency. And we have remaining ending fund balances. On the requirement side, where we do the appropriations, we appropriate at the levels of personnel services, materials and services, and capital outlay. In this supplemental budget, the capital outlay is only related to the CFP fund. So, resources that we can use to balance this budget. We've got excess revenue higher than what we forecast, and so the proposal is to use $750,000 of the approximately $1 million that we have in excess of the budget. One of the reasons we have excess in the budget is because we had a really warm and dry summer in 2015. Another reason is that because of the warm and dry spring, when we put that budget together, we were concerned that there might be curtailment and that we might have to do a mandatory curtailment. So I reduced the budget compared to what we would normally use, presuming that we might have up to a 10% curtailment requirement during those high summer months.
So you reduce the revenue.
So I reduced the revenue side of the budget based on that. I didn't want to say business as usual, we're going to have the same amount of revenue always, and then have that curtailment and have our revenue fall short. So it didn't fall short. I was extra conservative on my forecast, and that's why we have additional dollars that have come in already. So we also, in the contingency, we budgeted $750,000 contingency. This is money that we put aside for those specific unknowns, things that we just have no idea what's going to happen. You know, we could have a big main break, or we could have a multitude of our large meters, you know, go bad all at once, and we have to replace those. So, so we do put some money aside. We rarely have to use it. We have used it a few times in the past. So this supplemental budget proposes moving $300,000 from that contingency fund. So we would leave $450,000 in contingency for future changes, but move $300,000, and that's primarily to cover the cost of having somebody come in to do a water master plan. And the ending fund balance, where we don't anticipate any changes. That would be another option, would be to just reduce that ending fund balance. But since we already have more revenue on the top side, we just propose using that. So the requirements that we need for the general fund is an increase in the personnel services appropriation by about $250,000. And this is to cover some activities that we talked about at the work session in both the administration department as well as in the engineering department. And then a proposal to increase materials and services appropriation by $800,000. And this is to cover that professional contracted services, which is the water master plan, as well as an increase in water purchases on the south side. In the capital improvements fund, I'm proposing increasing that budget by $500,000. And the sources that I'm proposing is $250,000 from the system development charges. So far through June 30th of 2016, so 1 year into the budget, we are $367,000 over our forecasting SVCs. We typically do a very conservative budget on system development charges. We don't want to count our chickens before they're hatched, but we have had quite a few people come in, buy meters, and start new services. So we're over in that budget. And SDC revenue is available for CIP projects. That's the reason we collect it. And we can use it for either CIP projects or we can use it for debt service. Yes?
That's why I have a question. I knew it was there for CIP projects. How is it justifiably used for debt service?
Because the debt service, the money was borrowed to build CIP projects. So the
Okay,
debt service is just, we
that answers my
put
question.
money in our pocket first, hoping that people would come into the system, perhaps. And, some agencies use SBC solely to pay their debt. Some agencies don't do it at all, but based on the SDC laws, we are allowed to do that. We used to pay a portion of the debt with our SDCs when we had more money in that account, but as things really slowed down and the balances started being reduced, because we used the reserve in that SDC fund for CIP projects, we have opted to have the debt service be paid out of general fund dollars. This original biennial budget, we thought, okay, we're gonna take a 2-year breather. We're not planning on using any SDC money to fund any of the CIP projects that were in this budget. That's what we were thinking, 2 years ago when we put the budget together. But since we are 367,000 over our forecast at the end of year 1, and that's the 2-year forecast. So to me, and in talking with engineering, 250,000 from SDCs is an appropriate source of funding to help cover this project that we want to do. Also in the capital reserve fund, that's where the rest of the money would come from. And the reserve requirements, the reserve policy required $1,750,000 a year to go to the capital reserve. And then the capital reserve money fund can then be used for CIP projects as well. In this budget, we actually budgeted $4 million moving, so we're already ahead of what the policy requirement is. So the supplemental budget proposes an increase in capital outlay of $500,000. The board has been presented with information about the 82nd Avenue project, which is an opportunity project with ODOT going in there to do work. Now's the time to get in there and kind of clean up our stuff and get the services on new stuff. We don't want to wait till after ODOT's finished with their paving. And so that project is expected to cost about $800,000. But we've had some savings on some previous projects that we've done. We can delay some other projects, and so those will be revisited in the next biennial budget. And the engineering estimate is that we're still $406,000 short. So you might ask, why am I asking for $500,000? It's just, there could be other projects that come up, ODOT or Clackamas County projects that come up between now and June 30th. And I'd rather forecast a little heavier and not have to come back for another supplemental budget than find ourselves a little short at the end of the year. The way we work the CIP budget though, any dollars that we don't need, we only transfer what we need. So if we need exactly $406,000, we will transfer $406 from the capital reserve and SBCs in whatever proportion makes sense. Up to the limits, the $250,000 that we're asking in each fund. And the rest of the dollars will just stay in those reserve funds. It doesn't go into the CIP. It's not like we'll say, oh, we've got extra, let's spend it on this.
So if you needed an extra $50,000 of that remaining $94,000, would you be informing the board that there's another project that they're going to move the next $50,000 over with?
Typically, we would. I mean, it could be something within the general manager's
Discretion.
authority, but we still would
Totally.
let the board know what we're doing.
Thank you.
So that's my presentation on supplemental budget.
Are there any questions? Is there any comment from the public? Yes.
Gary Kerr, ratepayer, and member of the budget committee. I want to thank the board and the management and the staff for the presentation they gave at the workshop. opportunity to discuss the details more thoroughly than what was here. As a budget committee member, I support the changes that they're being proposed, and I want to let you know that. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks, Gary.
Any other comments from the board or the public? Okay, could I have a motion then to close the budget hearing and reopen the regular meeting?
So moved.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Okay, we're back into the regular meeting, and what I would like is somebody to do a resolution approving the supplemental budget.
Madam Chairman. I'm
Sorry, motion.
Would you like to make a motion?
No, I said, how about a motion, not a
Yes.
resolution?
I meant to say
Yeah,
motion, yes,
yeah.
sorry.
Madam Chairman, I move that the board approve resolution number 03-2017, adopting the supplemental budget and making appropriations for the 2015-2017 biennium.
Second.
Okay. Any other comments before we vote? Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed?
Thanks, Gary.
Supplemental budget passes. We're on to the second action item, which is to consider award to Murray and Smith and Associates for the engineering design services contract for the 152nd Street Reservoir project. And I will entertain a motion, and then we're going to have a presentation.
Madam Chairman, I move to award the professional services contract to Murray, Smith and Associates for engineering services for the 152nd Avenue Reservoir project, not to exceed the amount of $676,690, and authorize the general manager to sign the completed contract.
Okay.
Second.
Great, so we're going to have a presentation before we vote.
Good evening. I don't have a PowerPoint presentation, but I just have some talking points that are basically kind of in summary of what I already presented in the two write-ups, and I've kind of combined them together. I realize this is a two agenda item topic, but two design services contracts that both with Murray Smith and Associates that we're discussing or the board is considering tonight for design engineering services for the 152nd Reservoir project, the backbone projects, and then also the other one from the other agenda item for the Redland Reservoir project. As I wrote in the write-up, we followed the RFQ solicitation using the qualification-based selection process, which requires us to request proposals, get statements of qualifications from qualified firms, and then select a firm based on qualifications. And then after which, the most qualified firm is selected, negotiations ensue, and the scope and a fee are arrived at. So that process was followed per our rules and the ORS 279. Basically, for the 152nd project, we had three proposals. As I stated in there, three firms that all proposed on that project, and then under the Redland project, 5 proposals for that one. In both instances, we ended up selecting or interviewing the top 2 firms based on the proposals and how they scored initially by the evaluation team. Murray Smith and OBEC were the 2 firms in the 152nd project. And after the interviews, found that Murray Smith held their place, I guess. Real good feeling about both firms, really. Both did a great job, good written proposals, statements of qualifications, and good interviews. Murray Smith was deemed to be the most qualified for both projects. So, the design scopes, as I stated in there, just a quick summary again of what we're getting for the contracts. Murray Smith is going to provide full scale design services for the reservoir project. So that'll include preliminary design, geotechnical engineering, soil and seismic hazard evaluations. They're going to do civil site layout, water line, transmission main routing to and from the reservoir, landscaping, site security and access. There's, as you can imagine, a large structural component to the project, so they'll take the geotech information that they supply and design foundation, walls, all the elements of the tank. A big part of the 152nd project will be land use, so there, and public outreach, working with county, city of Happy Valley, other agencies that will be involved in permitting processes with that project. So quite a big, quite a decent scope in there for land use and permitting as well. Like I said, public outreach, we will receive a final design package when all said and done, through a 30, 60, and 90% final design stages. We'll have them retained for, and I'll put this at the pleasure of the board, but there probably will be opportune times during design where we can have them come to a board meeting or a work session, if that's the board's pleasure, to present design update on the project. And then they will, the final finished project, the design will be basically a bid-ready set of specifications and drawings for the project, so, as well as the permit application that the district will submit separately. So, this is, just as a reminder, both contracts, the 152nd and the Redland projects contracts, are for design services only. The district has the option at the appropriate time, probably once design is near completion and construction is more of a reality from a schedule standpoint, to either amend the contracts with MSA or go a different route to acquire construction services, which are highly recommended in this project. So to have a firm that, again, is ideally, the design firm is providing construction services as well, including inspection, detailed technical review, coordination, and project management with the contractor to ensure the project goes as planned.
So is there a reason we wouldn't just include that with this contract?
Main reason being that we prefer to wait until the design is complete or near complete and be able to scope out the construction much more accurately and come to a more accurate fee and scope.
For the construction services part?
For the construction services, correct. Yep.
I didn't know which was the best way to get the best price.
Right. Which leads me to a question. Why didn't we just bid the two tanks together in one bid?
Based on schedule and type of work, the 152nd reservoir, the concrete buried reservoir, the Redland reservoir is going to be a welded steel at-grade reservoir. We decided it would be more opportunistic to bid those separately. We did issue a single RFP or RFQ for two scopes, essentially a concrete and a steel scope, but we analyzed those separately, and with the option or the potential that there could have been two separate firms doing one of the other scopes.
Okay.
So,
thank you.
Any other questions?
I'm good.
Okay, so far we have a motion for the first contract on 152nd Reservoir. All in favor of the motion, please say aye.
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 I'm sorry, Madam Chair. Aye. Okay, it passes. So I need a motion. I did separate them out, so I need a motion for the second contract.
Madam Chairman, I move to award the professional services contract to Murray Smith and Associates for engineering services for the Redland Reservoir Number 3 project, not to exceed the amount of $422,819, and authorize the general manager to sign the completed contract.
Second.
Okay, we've already had a presentation on that, so we'll go ahead and vote. All in favor?
Aye.
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 Any opposed? Okay, it passes. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thanks, Adam.
And I think I need a motion for the consent agenda.
I move to approve the consent agenda as presented.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Passes. And we're up to informational reports, and we're now up to the management report.
Good evening, Commissioners. A number of things that I want to highlight in the manager's report that's included as agenda item number 4 in your packet, plus there's been some additional items that I want to bring to your attention that are not included in the report that that happened since the report was written. One on the intergovernmental relations front, just to point out a recent meeting with the Clackamas River water providers where I had a chance to hear about some work that the Clackamas River Basin Council has been working on in order to get funding for restoration activities within the Clackamas Basin. The Director Cheryl McGinnis had given us an overview of the strategic restoration action plan that they've been working on. That is something that they've been working on with the state of Oregon in order to prioritize restoration activities within the basin. So we are, the Clackamas River water providers are partners as part of that process, obviously because of our interest in the basin. However, obviously our direct involvement as it relates to some of the restoration activities. Some additional activities that the CRWP has been working on, I've also referenced in their newsletter that they've put together that's included as an attachment in your package. Also want to highlight that recently the Regional Water Providers Consortium Technical Committee met and talked a lot. It was more about how we work together in areas of interconnections or our interties, where we're trying to update our intertie study. Also, a little bit more about how we work together as it relates to disaster preparedness, but then we kind of wanted to highlight some of the work that's being done in the recognition of some of the challenges we have with some of the mixed messages that went out as it relates to droughts. And so the regional water providers are trying to kind of come together to see if there's some opportunities to better educate each other as far as some of the triggers and so on, and then also what sort of collective messages can we distribute. So that's something that you'll see more of in the future. Hopefully we'll get some more commonality as we prepare for next summer. In addition, I had mentioned a couple meetings ago about Metro's interest in withdrawing or no longer being a member of the Regional Water Providers Consortium, and so as a result of that, there has been a letter that the consortium has sent to Metro, which is also included in your packet. The next item I just want to briefly touch on is the Drought Task Force. CRW's Dr. Suzanne DiLorenzo has been a representative of municipalities on that Drought Task Force, and they've recently completed their work with the report going to the governor. Just want to thank Suzanne for her service in that. I know it's one of those thankless jobs of attending a number of meetings and trying to implement or put information in the report, but it's still important and very valuable. I've also been trying to outreach to some additional partners in the basin, so I had a good meeting with the North Clackamas Parks and Rec District, where I got to share some of the challenges that we have with Riverside Park, and they've offered to share any expertise and insight that they might have on how to manage some of the issues that we're dealing with. And then also our Clackamas Little League has been a long-term partner as it relates to Riverside Park, and so we had a chance to kind of meet their new leadership and update them on activities. I want to highlight we've had some progress as it relates to our radio frequency update. You can ignore the update that's in there. We've actually been granted our FCC. The FCC has granted the business license just this week, so some development since this was written. We're still waiting on the public safety license, although we have some additional paperwork that's recently been submitted that should help progress that along. I think I've already talked about the communication study status, the last work session, and just let you know that we're continuing to make progress and moving forward with the consultant on that. You just heard about the supplemental budget. I think it's also important that while Carol was working on that, she was also having to deal with the auditors in the office. And so October was a very busy month. We had our auditors, Moss Adams, in the office and doing their field work, and that requires staff to provide them with the information they requested in the documentation and so on. They're in the process of pulling together all that information. I think our sense is that it went very well, and that we were able to effectively answer their questions. And Moss Adams will actually be here at your December meeting to present information in the report. We hope to actually have a document for you. Some additional items that are not included on your in the manager's report. One, let you know, although we have an executive session scheduled for this evening, we will not need the executive session tonight, so there is no executive session after this meeting. Also want to point out that yesterday we received notification that we have our drinking water quality laboratory has passed its biennial on-site inspection, which is required with the National Environmental Laboratory Accreditation Certification. So we're certified again for another 2 years on our microbiological analysis of the drinking water that we do here. So that's kind of one of those unique functions that we provide. So again, credit to Suzanne and the rest of the lab staff and Tracy for helping us through that process. Another item I just want to bring to your attention is it's always a good time to encourage conservation. It's not just for the summer. Obviously, the focus in the summer is more on outdoor water use, and so we thought we'd use the opportunity during the winter to encourage folks to take out their indoor water use. And so one of the things that we have is indoor water conservation kits that have been developed and that is available to all of our customers to help them do an indoor water use checkup. And obviously that's something that has value all year long, not just during the summer.
You're killing our revenue.
I know. It's, isn't that crazy? You pay to tell them to use less. So So the information.
Counterintuitive if anything ever was.
Welcome to the world of water. So the one thing to be aware of is customers are encouraged to stop by the office and pick up a kit, or they can actually go on to the CRW blog and fill out a form, and we'll make arrangements for them to get a kit in their house or kit in their hands. And then they can find our CRW blog either on our website or on Facebook, follow us on Facebook or on Twitter. So a variety of ways to do that. In addition to the newsletter and articles and stuff that are included in your packet, I do want to, in one of the handouts this evening was the article that recently appeared the other day in the Oregonian as it relates to the lead issue. Lead issues, once again, kind of is in the news as it relates to the city of Portland. You can read the article about the concerns with the elevated lead levels and some of the direction the state's providing to the city of Portland to take action as it relates to implementing some corrosion control measures and also helping with the public outreach, especially to vulnerable populations. I will use this moment as an opportunity to also point out that CRW has completed its lead sampling for the year, and all results were below the action level, so we're setting well in that regard. One other item that was handed out to you is a board calendar. I want to note that this is draft. What we were trying to do is look at 2017. I know we're still in 2016, but I wanted us to look at ahead and identify when the board meeting dates and the work session dates would be conducted. The reason I'm calling this draft is because I'm going to ask that you take it back, look through, make sure that works with your schedule, and then come back at the next meeting and hopefully we can have agreement on what those dates are. We're following our typical protocol as far as the board meetings being held on the second, the regular board meetings being held on the second Thursday of the month, and work sessions being held on the fourth Monday of the month. However, I will point out that in March we're proposing a different meeting time because of conflicts with spring break, and then also we're not planning on a work session. I should back up. The March only affects the work session date. We just moved it 1 week. In December, we weren't including a work session because of the conflict with holidays. We could always add one later on as we get closer. And then I am aware of the fact that in our January work session, we do have a potential conflict that Commissioner Anger has, and we could easily move that date.
Yes, I was asking.
That work.
I was going to be out of town on the 4th Monday, so I was asking that the work session be moved to the 5th Monday, if that's okay, so people can go home and look at their calendars and see if that's okay with them.
So if you'd be prepared we can revisit that at our next meeting real quick. or just if there's changes or conflicts, let me shoot Karen and I an email, and we'll make sure those are noted. Let's see, another handouts that you have, at the last work session, the board accepted the GM goals. I will note that there was one additional goal that was added, that is listed under the planning and work portion. It's goal number 5. And so, it was one of the things suggested by Commissioner McNeil, so we have added that, and so you have a final accepted copy of the GM goals for your review and consideration. Two more things real quick. One, just to let you know, since it may hit the news, is the fact that as I was walking in here, I was informed that the city of Milwaukee has just issued a boil water notice. That does not impact the folks that are in Milwaukee that receive water from CRW. This is strictly related to the city of Milwaukee only system. So if you hear of anybody asking questions, please, hopefully we'll continue to work. We'll have information on our website that helps try to clarify that, who's impacted as well. So last, just some schedule items to make you aware of. One, the Clackamas Regional Water Supply Commission meeting is on Monday at 4 p.m. here. We have Commissioner Kalani and Commissioner Anger and Commissioner Hummerson that are representatives. I know Commissioner Hummerson is not able to attend, and so another commissioner is interested in attending that. That would be great, but we'll have 2 commissioners there, so we're covered. Also point out that we do have an executive session scheduled on Friday, November 18th at 2:30 p.m. We will have it set up so that you can either attend in person here at CRW in the executive session room, or we'll also have call-in information. We anticipate it to be a very short executive session, so if you just prefer to call in on our line, that's an option as well. And then last, for Thanksgiving that week, November 21st through the 25th, I'll be out of town that week, and so Carol will be serving in my capacity, and so she'll be in charge while I'm out in the way that week. So if there's any questions.
Is the office open on the Friday after, or is it closed now?
It's
closed for
closed.
the 4 days, okay.
So, and that concludes my lengthy general manager report this evening.
Okay. Just about
Madam President?
yes, I was going to do that next.
Okay.
Public comment.
Very short, I'm right here this time. I'm concerned, the letter from Tom Lewis references the promotion of the coordination between growth management and water supply planning, which is the Metro mandate. I would hope that either the Regional Water Supply Consortium and or CRW itself independently would watch Metro carefully to see that they don't exercise all of their authorities. Since they're no longer going to be part of the consortium, that relationship now will not be transparent. And so I would encourage you to encourage yourselves or the consortium or others to monitor them. I personally live outside the metro boundaries, don't get to vote for anybody. And so I have no way of doing personal input. So I encourage CRW independently or through the consortium to continue to monitor what they're doing internally and what the planning schedules are, and read through the euphemisms that usually show up in the meeting notices. So I would encourage you to do that.
So that made me bring up a question. Do we know why Metro left the consortium?
You were at the meeting.
They have not yet shared the reasons why that they wanted to do this. They did give us a year's notice. With the executive board has directed staff to send a letter to, I believe, to Commissioner Craddock at this point, and we await their response. We're asking them why, and with the intent of trying to encourage them to return. But
Okay.
I don't have anything I can say beyond that at this point.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you.
You know,
Yeah,
so
go ahead.
to that end, I don't know how many people watch the snow like I watch the snow, but in the warmest November, almost on record,
Yeah.
there is no, not some, no, zero snow in the high elevations right now, none. This is when we build that high snowpack that we rely on the summertime. And it may not matter what Metro says, Mother Nature may just make the decision for us. And you being on the Board of County Commissioners, it'll be interesting to see if we get any better support than we've gotten in the past from our Board of County Commissioners. And so, I guess my concern is that the region continues to grow at reckless abandon without any regard for the supply of water long-term. And there doesn't seem to be, Metro does not seem to care. You know, they're gonna continue to increase densities way beyond the capacity of our natural resources. And then we've got a problem, how do you back up? I don't know how you back up. I mean, who leaves? You know, I mean, it's a big deal. I mean, if water isn't the most important thing, I don't know what is. And so, you know, transportation, you can do something about that. But if there's no water, there's no water.
Yeah,
So,
that's true.
unless we have some magical way to drill some wells around here that are, you know, gonna triple the cost of water, I'm not sure what to do. It's certainly not factored into the rates now.
Any other comments from the public? Okay, so we are up to Commissioner business, and I think Commissioner Humberson wanted to say something.
On that note, this is the annual report from the Regional Water Providers Consortium. I will give that to our board president. I encourage people to read it. I expect that I will, assuming that the election is certified, I'll submit a letter of resignation effective December 31st, which will give the board an opportune time, or plenty of time to solicit for applications for the seat. There are 4 things that I serve on currently. I'd like to encourage the board to get somebody to do these things. The Regional Water Providers Consortium, we are on the overall board, and I serve on the executive board. A lot of the emergency water equipment that we have received as a result of that organization, and I think keeping our hand in there is an important thing to do, and it's also dovetails with what you were talking about with respect to Metro. So I would encourage somebody to take that. We do have currently a seat on that executive board, so you would fill that seat. I'm the liaison to Sunrise Water Authority. I would encourage somebody to take that and help continue to maintain that relationship. And then I serve also on the Regional Water, Clackamas Regional Water Supply Commission, which is the joint board, and please somebody take that. So think about what you have the time to do and are willing to do. But I think those are some of the most important liaison responsibilities that we could fill. So I would encourage people to at least grab one of them. So, thank you.
Thank you. And just for the information, when it becomes official, whoever is selected to be on the Clackamas School Water Board, it will be for 6 months, and then they will be running in the May election. So just so that you're aware of that. It's just going to be a filler. Are there any other commissioner reports?
If someone decides to take my place at this next meeting on Monday, here is the agenda. So they'll have all the backup.
I got one in the mail. Yeah.
One of the other board members might need it if they decide.
It went out in the mail.
Oh, okay, okay. So everybody got one? Yeah. Right here.
Is there anything else? Okay, I guess. We're gonna adjourn. Thank you.